Commander Arya floated through the corridor of Bastion Prime, her boots magnetic against the metal floor. She had lived her entire 32 years in space. Her bones were light, her muscles adapted to zero gravity, and Earth below was just a blue marble she had never touched. To her, the void between stars was home. The fortress hung in orbit like a massive ring of steel and defiance. Inside its walls, 10,000 souls lived and worked, all that remained of humanity's military power. For 200 years, the Dominion had pushed them back, system by system, planet by planet. The aliens were stronger, their technology superior, their numbers vast. 3 species united against one, humanity. But humans were stubborn. They learned to fight in ways that could not match. Where the aliens feared the empty dark, humans thrived. The starborn warriors were proof of that. Born in orbital stations, raised in zero gravity, they moved through space like fish through water. They were humanity's edge in a war that had taken everything else. Arya reached the command center and pulled herself through the doorway. Admiral Park waited inside, his face grim. The old man had gray hair and tired eyes, but his voice was still strong. "Commander," he said, "we have a problem." Arya anchored herself to a handlebar and waited. Problems were normal. The war was 2 centuries of problems stacked on top of each other. "Our intelligence network intercepted communications 3 days ago," Park continued. He activated a hologram between them. A massive structure appeared, rotating slowly. "This is what they're building in the Shroud Nebula. We're calling it the Quantum Anchor." Arya studied the image. The device was enormous, covered in strange geometric patterns that hurt to look at. "What does it do?" "It collapses stars into black holes," Park said quietly. "Controlled collapse. They can aim it, and their target is our sun." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Arya felt her stomach tighten. "How long do we have?" 6 weeks until it's operational, maybe less. "Then we destroy it." Park shook his head. "It's deep in the Shroud Nebula. That region is a graveyard. Radiation, debris fields, sensor blackout. Normal ships can't navigate it. Faster-than-light drives won't work there. It's why they chose that location." Arya understood immediately. "But Starborn can navigate it." "That's what I'm counting on." Park pulled up another display. "I'm authorizing a strike mission. 12 personnel, 1 stealth ship. You'll cross the nebula, reach the anchor, and disable it. The mission is classified at the highest level. If you fail, Earth dies." "If we succeed?" Park smiled, but there was no joy in it. "If you succeed, you might change the war. They have never been hit deep in their own territory. Show them they're vulnerable, and maybe they'll reconsider this whole extinction plan." Arya thought about the numbers. 12 people against whatever defended that weapon. The Shroud Nebula was 3 weeks of travel through the most dangerous region in known space. The odds were terrible. "I'll need to pick my team," she said. "Already authorized. Take whoever you want from the Starborn units. You leave in 48 hours." Arya saluted and pushed off toward the exit. Her mind was already running through names, skills, and who might be crazy enough to volunteer for a suicide mission. The answer turned out to be everyone. Within 6 hours, Arya had more volunteers than she could accept. The Starborn knew what was at stake. They gathered in the training bay, floating in loose clusters, all of them lean and sharp-eyed. These were people who had never known gravity's pull, who thought in 3 dimensions while planet-born humans still thought in 2. Arya chose carefully. Was first, a weapons specialist who treated explosives like art. He was small, quick, and had once destroyed an enemy carrier with nothing but mining charges and patience. Came next, a navigator who could read space like others read books. She claimed she could feel stellar drift in her bones. Then there was, he floated at the back of the bay, watching but not approaching. Was older than most Starborn, nearly 40, with scars on his hands from years of engineering work. He was also a traitor. 5 years ago had leaked classified information to the fleet movements, weapon specifications, enough to cost humanity 3 battles and hundreds of lives. He had been caught, court-martialed, and imprisoned. Only his skills as an engineer had kept him alive. Arya floated over to him. "I need you for this mission." Looked surprised. "Why would you trust me?" "I don't," Arya said honestly. "But you're the best engineer we have. Intelligence says the quantum anchor uses technology we've never seen. If anyone can figure out how to disable it, it's you. The crew will hate having me aboard." "Probably, but I'm not asking them, I'm telling them." Arya met his eyes. "This is your chance to balance the scales. You helped kill hundreds. Now you can help save billions." Was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded. "I'll go." The rest of the team came together quickly. 12 in total, each one a specialist. They gathered their gear, studied what little intelligence existed about the Shroud Nebula, and prepared for a journey none of them expected to survive. The ship was called Prometheus Dawn, a sleek stealth vessel designed for long-range operations. It was painted matte black, covered in heat-dispersing panels that made it nearly invisible to sensors. Inside, the corridors were narrow, the quarters cramped. It was built for efficiency, not comfort. On the launch deck, Arya gathered her crew for final words. They floated in a circle, magnetic boots keeping them loosely anchored. "We all know what this is," she said. "They think they've won. They think they can kill our son and finish this war. We're going to prove them wrong. We're going to fly through hell, find their weapon, and break it." Grinned, "And if we die doing it?" "Then we die making sure they remember us," Arya said. "They think humans are weak because we can't match their technology. They don't understand that we don't need to. We fight smarter, we fight harder, and we never, ever surrender." The crew nodded. These were people who had lived their entire lives under the shadow of extinction. Fear was just another variable to calculate around. "One more thing," Arya continued. "Some of you have questions about being on this mission. I know his history, I know what he did, but right now he's crew. We trust each other or we die. Simple as that." She looked at. He met her gaze and nodded slowly. The others remained silent, but Arya saw acceptance in their faces, or at least understanding. They boarded the Prometheus Dawn in silence. The ship detached from Bastion Prime with a soft clang, drifting away from the fortress on maneuvering thrusters. Behind them, Earth turned slowly, blue and white and beautiful. Arya took one last look. She had never walked on a planet, never felt rain or wind, never stood on ground that didn't move. Earth was an idea to her, not a place, but it was worth dying for anyway. The ship's engines fired, pushing them toward the edge of the system. Behind them, Bastion Prime grew smaller, a ring of light against the dark. Ahead was only void. 3 days later, they reached the edge of the Shroud Nebula. They showed a wall of crimson mist stretching across the stars. Lightning flickered inside it, arcs of energy jumping between clouds of ionized gas. It looked like the entrance to some ancient hell. "Sensors are already degrading," reported from the navigation station. "We're going to be flying blind in there." "Can you navigate it?" Arya asked. Studied her displays, fingers dancing across controls. "Maybe. The nebula has currents just like water, stellar wind patterns. If I can read them right, I can plot a course. But it's going to be slow, 3 weeks minimum." "Then we take 3 weeks," Arya said. She activated ship-wide communications. "All crew secure for nebula entry. From here on, we go quiet. No active sensors, no transmissions, nothing that might give us away. They are out there. We don't want them to know we're coming." The Prometheus Dawn slipped into the shroud like a knife into flesh. The crimson mist swallowed them, and the stars disappeared. Outside the viewports, there was only red darkness and the occasional flash of ancient lightning. They were inside enemy territory now. No communication with Earth, no support, no rescue. Just 12 humans in a small ship, heading toward a weapon that could end their species. Arya felt strangely calm. This was what Starborn did. They went where others couldn't. They fought in the dark places. And if they had to die, at least they would die in the void where they belonged. The ship moved deeper into the nebula, and behind them the last glimpse of normal space faded away. There was no turning back now, only forward into the storm, toward whatever waited at the heart of the shroud. The mission had begun. The Shroud Nebula was worse than anyone had imagined. The first week tested them in ways training never could. The mist outside wasn't just gas and dust. It was alive with energy, crackling storms that appeared without warning and fried electronics if they got too close. Spent 18 hours a day at navigation, eyes bloodshot, hands trembling as she guided them through currents only she could sense. "There," she would say, pointing at the where everything looked the same. "That's a stable channel. Follow it for 3,000 kilometers, then we turn." The crew learned to trust her instincts. They had no choice. On the 6th day, they entered the wreckage belt. The debris appeared on short-range sensors like a wall of ghosts. Thousands of ancient ships, destroyed in some forgotten war, now tumbling through the nebula in eternal silence. Some were massive, the size of cities. Others were just fragments, twisted metal that had been floating for 1,000 years. "Kill all thrust," Arya ordered. "We drift through." The Prometheus Dawn went silent, coasting on momentum alone. Outside, the wrecks drifted past like sleeping giants. Arya watched them through the viewport and wondered what species had built them. What war had they fought? Did anyone remember their names? Then spoke from engineering. "Commander, I'm picking up active signatures. Some of these wrecks still have power." "How is that possible?" asked. "They're ancient." "Automated systems," said. "Defenses that never shut down, and something else. Motion inside one of the larger hulks could be structural settling or void spawn," Arya finished. She had heard stories about the parasites, silicon-based creatures that fed on metal and lived in derelict ships. They were supposed to be rare. The motion sensors pinged, then again, then a dozen times in rapid succession. "They're coming out of the wrecks," said, her voice tight. "Multiple contacts moving fast." Arya saw them on the display. Dozens of objects, each about the size of a human, swarming from the dead ships like insects from a hive. They moved with purpose, heading straight for the Prometheus Dawn. "Battle stations," Arya said calmly. "Looks like we're not alone out here." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Armed the point defense system, sealed the engineering section. The others grabbed magnetic rifles and positioned themselves at key junctions. The void spawn hit the hull like a wave. Arya heard the scraping, a sound like nails on metal that made her teeth ache. Through the external cameras, she watched the creatures. They were nightmares made real, bodies of crystalline silicon that reflected the nebula's red light. They had too many limbs, moving in ways that hurt to watch. "They're trying to eat through the hull," reported. "Outer plating is holding, but not for long." "Can we shake them off?" Arya asked. "Not without thrust, and if we fire engines, every in the nebula will know we're here." Arya made a decision. "Prep a mining charge, small yield. We're going to use the debris field against them." His face split into a grin. "Now you're speaking my language." He worked quickly, fingers flying over the weapon's console. "Charge ready, target." Arya studied the tactical display. They were surrounded by wrecks, massive hulks drifting in all directions. She pointed to the largest one, a dead battleship the size of a skyscraper. "That one. Place the charge on our hull, magnetic detonation. 3-second timer." "That's going to get their attention," said. "That's the idea." Launch the charge. It attached to the Prometheus Dawn's outer hull with a soft clunk. Arya counted down in her head. 3, 2, 1. The explosion was small but precisely placed. It didn't damage the ship, but it did push them hard to starboard. More importantly, it sent a shockwave through the debris field. The dead battleship nearby began to tumble, its massive bulk rotating slowly toward them. The void spawn felt it too. They scattered, releasing the hull and diving away from the approaching wreck. But they were too slow. The battleship crashed into the swarm like a hammer, crushing dozens of the creatures between its hull and the smaller debris around them. The survivors fled back into the wrecks. Within minutes, the motion sensors went quiet. "Damage report," Arya said. "Minor scarring on the outer hull," reported. "Nothing critical, we got lucky." "Luck had nothing to do with it," said. "That was art." They drifted for another hour before Arya allowed the engines to restart. The wreckage belt fell behind them, and the crew breathed easier. But the encounter had cost them time and nerves. On the 10th day, tensions came to a head. Arya found them in the common area, voices raised. Was floating near, anger clear on his face. Two other crew members blocked the exits. "We need to talk about the traitor," said when Arya entered. "Half the crew doesn't trust him. Why is he even here?" Said nothing, just floated with his arms crossed. "I already explained this," Arya said. "We need his skills." "We need someone who won't sell us out the first chance he gets," another crew member said. "He killed our people, Commander, hundreds of them, and now we're supposed to work beside him." "Yes," Arya said simply. "That's exactly what you're supposed to do." "Why?" demanded. "Give us one good reason." Arya looked at, "Tell them." Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "They had my daughter. They took her during a raid on Station Gamma. She was 6 years old. They sent me a message. Give them intelligence or she dies." The common area went silent. "I gave them what they wanted," continued. "Fleet movements, weapon specs, anything they asked for, and they killed her anyway. Sent me a video of it just to make sure I understood. I betrayed humanity for nothing. My daughter died screaming and I couldn't even save her." Anger drained away. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because it doesn't matter," said. "Nothing changes what I did. I'm still a traitor. People still died because of me. But the commander is right. I'm good at engineering. And if I can use that to hurt them to make them pay for what they did, then maybe my daughter's death means something." The crew looked at each other, finally nodded slowly. "All right, I understand, but if you betray us out here, I'll space you myself." "Fair enough," said. The tension eased, not gone but manageable. They were still a crew, still a team. That was enough. On the 14th day, they detected the scout squadron. 4 ships, reported. Light cruisers moving in search pattern, they're sweeping the nebula. "Can we avoid them?" Arya asked. "Not unless we go deeper into the storm zone. The radiation there would kill us in hours." Arya studied the tactical display. The scouts were spread out, covering a wide area. If the Prometheus Dawn tried to slip past, they would be detected. And if they were detected, the scouts would call for reinforcements. "We take them out," she decided. "Quiet and quick before they can transmit." 4 cruisers against 1 stealth ship, said. "I like those odds." The Prometheus Dawn went dark, killing all systems except life support. They drifted into the debris field like just another piece of wreckage. The scouts approached, their sensors sweeping the area. The aliens were careless. They moved in predictable patterns, their formation loose. They didn't expect to find anyone this deep in the shroud. It made them sloppy. When the first cruiser passed within a kilometer, Arya gave the order, "Now." Had prepositioned magnetic mines throughout the debris field. He triggered them all at once. Dozens of explosions bloomed in the red mist, shaped charges that sent pieces of ancient wreckage flying like missiles. The first cruiser disappeared in a ball of fire, torn apart by metal that had been floating for centuries. The other 3 scouts scattered, trying to locate their attacker, but the Prometheus Dawn was already moving. Arya had trained her crew for this. They fired maneuvering thrusters in short bursts, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. They used the debris as cover, as weapons, as shields. The second cruiser died when vented coolant into its path. The liquid froze instantly in the void, creating a cloud of ice crystals that shredded the ship's sensors. Blind, the cruiser collided with a wreck at high speed. The impact broke its spine. Two left. The remaining scouts finally coordinated, moving to bracket the Prometheus Dawn's position. They fired weapons, bright lances of energy that cut through the mist. One shot came close enough that Arya felt the heat through the bulkhead. "Get us an exit vector," she ordered. "Working on it, the debris is too thick. If we accelerate, we'll hit something." "Then we don't accelerate. Prep our last torpedo. I need a target." Pulled up sensor data. There. The larger scout has weaker armor on the ventral section. Engineering vulnerability. One good hit will breach their reactor. "That's our shot," Arya said. "Torpedo ready. But Commander, at this range, they'll detect the launch. We'll have maybe 3 seconds before they return fire." 3 seconds is enough. Fire when ready." The torpedo launched with a soft thud. It streaked through the debris field, its tiny engine burning bright. The scout detected it immediately and turned to intercept, point defense systems tracking the incoming weapon. But the Starborn had planned for that, had programmed the torpedo to spiral, weaving through the debris in a pattern no computer could predict. The defenses fired and missed, then fired again and missed. The torpedo slipped through their screen like a needle and punched into the scout's ventral armor. The explosion was beautiful and terrible. The reactor breach sent a shockwave through the debris field, vaporizing everything within 100 meters. The scout died instantly, torn into fragments. The last cruiser ran. It fired maneuvering thrusters and dove deeper into the nebula, desperate to escape, but had predicted its path. She had positioned the Prometheus Dawn perfectly. "One chance," Arya said. "Do we have anything left?" "Just the ship's short-range manual aim." "Take the shot." Floated to the weapons station and gripped the manual controls. He tracked the fleeing scout through the targeting scope, compensating for drift and debris. Then he fired. The slug crossed the distance in less than a second. It hit the scout's engine compartment and punched clean through. The ship tumbled, venting atmosphere and fuel. It crashed into a wreck and went silent. "All targets destroyed," confirmed. "No distress signals detected." The crew exhaled together. They had done it. 4 cruisers destroyed without being identified. As far as the enemy knew, the scouts had simply disappeared into the shroud. But the fight had cost them. Arya checked the damage reports and felt her heart sink. "What's the status of our FTL drive?" There was a long pause. "It's gone, Commander. One of those energy blasts came closer than I thought. The main motivator is cracked. I can't fix it out here. We're stuck at speeds." The implications hit everyone at once. Without faster-than-light capability, they couldn't retreat. Even if they wanted to turn back, the journey to Earth would take decades. They were committed now, completely and totally. "How far to the quantum anchor?" Arya asked. 4 days at current speed," said quietly. 4 days, and then they would either succeed or die trying. There was no third option anymore. Arya looked at her crew. They floated in the narrow corridor, bruised and tired but unbroken. "We knew this was one way when we signed up. Nothing's changed except now it's official. We finish the mission or we die trying." "Sounds good to me," said. "I never liked goodbyes anyway." The others nodded. These were Starborn warriors. They had lived their entire lives in the void. If they had to die here, at least it would be on their own terms. The Prometheus Dawn continued deeper into the shroud. Behind them, 4 cruisers drifted as wreckage. Ahead, somewhere in the red darkness, waited the weapon that could end Earth. They had 4 days to find it and 4 days to destroy it. The clock was ticking, and there was no going back. On the 18th day, they saw it. The quantum anchor emerged from the mist like a nightmare made solid. It was massive beyond comprehension, a structure that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Geometric patterns covered its surface, angles that seemed to shift when you looked at them directly. Energy crackled across its hull, contained by fields that bent light into strange colors. "That's what they're using to kill stars," whispered. "According to intelligence, yes," said. He was studying the structure on his displays, fingers moving rapidly. "It's generating a quantum field that can reach across star systems. Once it's fully charged, they point it at a target star and trigger a cascade collapse. The star implodes into a black hole." "How long until it's operational?" Arya asked. "Maybe a week. The energy readings are still building." A week. They had arrived just in time. "What about defenses?" asked. The answer came immediately. The dreadnought fleet hung in formation around the anchor like a crown of thorns. Arya counted 50 capital ships, each one large enough to carry thousands of crew. Hundreds of smaller vessels moved between them. Fighter craft swarmed in patrol patterns. It was the largest concentration of enemy forces she had ever seen. "We can't fight that," one crew member said. "We don't have to fight it," Arya replied. "We just have to get past it." She studied the tactical display, looking for weaknesses. They had positioned their fleet to defend against conventional attacks, ships coming from normal space. But the Prometheus Dawn wasn't coming from normal space. They were already inside the nebula, hidden by the mist. "Can you find us a path through the densest part of the storm? Something that goes around the fleet?" Pulled up navigation data and went pale. "There's a channel. It cuts through the heart of the nebula, loops around behind the anchor. But Commander, the radiation levels there are lethal. We'd be exposed to the equivalent of 1,000 reactor meltdowns. Our shielding won't protect us." "How long would we be in the radiation zone?" 3 hours, maybe 4. Arya did the math in her head. 3 hours of lethal radiation. The crew would start dying within the first hour. By the time they reached the anchor, most of them would be dead or dying. But they would reach the anchor. "Call everyone to the common area," Arya said. "They need to hear this." The crew gathered, 12 people floating in a space meant for 8. They looked at Arya with tired eyes. They had been through hell already, and they knew worse was coming. Arya explained the situation simply. The radiation, the timeline, the odds. She didn't soften it or hide the truth. "We can reach the anchor," she finished. "But it's going to kill us. The radiation will cook us alive long before we finish the mission. If anyone wants to abort, now is the time. We can turn back, try to find another way." "There is no other way," said, "and we all knew this was suicide from the start." "Speak for yourself," said, then he grinned. "But yeah, I'm in. I want to see the look on their faces when we blow up their fancy weapon." One by one, the crew voiced agreement. Nobody wanted to turn back. They had come too far, lost too much. And behind them, back past the shroud, Earth hung in space with billions of people who would never know their names. "Then we vote," Arya said, "all in favor of proceeding." Every hand went up. "Then we proceed," Arya said. "Suit up, full radiation gear. Not that it will help much, but it might buy us an extra hour. Plot the course. Everyone else, secure your stations. This is it." They prepared in silence. The radiation suits were thick and clumsy, designed for reactor maintenance, not combat, but they were all they had. Arya sealed her helmet and checked the seal. The suit's internal display showed radiation levels in green. That wouldn't last. The Prometheus Dawn turned toward the storm. The channel had found looked like a wound in space, darker than the surrounding mist, crackling with lightning that never stopped. It was beautiful and terrible. "Beginning approach," said. Her voice came through the suit radio, steady despite what they were flying toward. The ship entered the channel, and immediately the radiation alarms began screaming. Arya muted them. The numbers didn't matter anymore. The first hour was bearable. The suits held and the crew worked at their stations. But Arya saw the way people's hands began to shake. The way they moved more slowly. Radiation was invisible, but its effects were very real. In the second hour, vomited inside his helmet. He wiped his visor and kept working, plotting trajectories for their final attack. Hands were blistering, the skin turning red and angry, but he stayed at his console, analyzing the anchor's defenses. Was the worst. The radiation hit her eyes first. She went blind in the third hour, staring at displays she could no longer see. But her hands still moved across the controls, navigating by memory and instinct alone. Left 5 degrees, she would say, and the ship would turn. Steady on this heading. Her fingers danced across controls she couldn't see, reading the ship's position through touch alone. They emerged from the radiation channel on the far side of the fleet. The Prometheus Dawn's hull was scorched, its systems failing, but it was still moving. Ahead, the quantum anchor loomed like a moon made of nightmares. "We're through," said. Then she collapsed, her body finally giving out. Arya caught her before she hit a bulkhead. "Can you take navigation?" On it, pulled himself to station, his blistered hands leaving blood on the controls. "How many are still functional?" Arya asked. 7, reported. "The others are unconscious. We've got maybe an hour before the rest of us go down." 1 hour, it would have to be enough. The Prometheus Dawn drifted toward the anchor's surface, hidden by the same radiation that was killing its crew. The Never detected them. Why would they? Nothing could survive the approach they had just made. But Starborn weren't nothing. They were stubborn and crazy and desperate. They were humanity's last chance. The ship touched down on the anchor's hull with a soft clang. Arya led the boarding team, moving in her radiation suit like it was a second skin. Behind her came and 3 others. The rest stayed with the ship, too sick to move. They cut through the hull with plasma torches. The metal was strange, alloys that resisted their tools, but eventually it gave way. They dropped into a corridor that stretched into darkness. Inside, the anchor was vast. Hallways branched in impossible directions. Gravity pulled from multiple angles at once. The Starborn adapted, using their zero-G training to navigate spaces that would confuse planet-born humans. They encountered defenders. The aliens were tall, covered in chitinous armor with too many limbs. They fought with energy weapons that cut through bulkheads, but the Starborn were faster. They moved in 3 dimensions while the thought in 2. Arya shot one through the chest while upside down relative to the enemy, used a gravity shift to drop a grenade directly into another's path. They pushed deeper into the structure, following's directions. He had studied the sensor readings, built a mental map of the facility. "The core should be ahead," he said through labored breathing. "That's where they're storing the energy." They found it 10 minutes later. The chamber was enormous, circular, with walls that pulsed with contained starlight. In the center, suspended in energy fields, were thousands of pods. Inside each pod was a human. "What is this?" whispered. Approached the nearest pod, horror dawning on his face. "They're alive. Barely. They are using their minds to perform calculations. The quantum math required to collapse a star is too complex for computers, so they enslaved human consciousness to do it." Arya felt sick. The prisoners floated in their pods, faces slack, minds trapped in endless mathematical nightmares. How long had they been here? Months? Years? "Can we free them?" she asked. "Not without killing them," said. "They're integrated into the system. Disconnect them and their minds will burn out." He moved to another pod, then froze. "No, it can't be." Arya looked. Inside the pod was a young girl, maybe 12 years old. She had eyes. "Breathed, but you died. They sent me proof." "They lied," Arya said quietly. "They kept her alive to use her." His hands pressed against the pod's surface. His daughter's eyes were open but unseeing, lost in whatever horror they had trapped her in. "I can wake her," he said. "Give her a few minutes of consciousness before we shut down the system." "Can you do it while disabling the anchor?" Yes, I'll need 10 minutes. Alarms began blaring. The head finally realized they were here. You've got 5, Arya said. Set up a perimeter, everyone else hold this position. Nobody gets through. They fought in that chamber, 7 dying humans against an enemy that numbered in the hundreds. They poured through every entrance, firing energy weapons that carved through the walls. But the Starborn held their ground. Arya shot until her rifle ran dry, then switched to her sidearm. When that was empty, she used a piece of debris as a club. Beside her, laughed as he threw grenades, each explosion perfectly placed. One of their crew went down, then another, but the rest kept fighting. Behind them worked at the control systems. His hands moved slowly, hampered by radiation sickness and failing strength. He interfaced with the quantum core, unraveling the mathematics that held it together. And he woke his daughter. His eyes focused. She saw her father through the pod's transparent surface, saw him for the first time in 5 years. Spoke to her through the pod's communication system. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but I'm going to make this right. His voice came through, weak but clear. Dad, is that really you? It's me, I'm here, and I'm going to get you out of this. You can't, I'm part of the system. If you shut it down, I die. I know, but at least you'll be free. At least they won't use you anymore. Was quiet, then she smiled. Do it, finish this, make them pay. Entered the final sequence. The quantum core began to collapse, energy spiraling inward. The countdown started, 60 seconds. It's done, said. The anchor is going critical. When it goes, it'll release all the stored stellar energy at once. Everything within 1,000 kilometers will be vaporized. Then we need to leave, Arya said. There's no time. The radiation, the fighting, we're too far gone. We're not making it back to the ship. 50 seconds. Arya knew he was right. Half her crew was dead already. The rest were barely standing, and they were still coming. Then we hold this position, she said.